Chris spent 5 minutes on knight g4, which happens to be the best move. Then Kolbaki played c3, which is also the best move. Chris played bishop c5, which is also the best move. Best and best. Now, the main point of this is if pawn takes bishop, then rook f3. And what's interesting is there's a queen trap line, which is kind of cute. I'll show it to you. Threatening mate in one here. White checks. And it looks like he picks up a free bishop, but now his queen is trapped. Has nowhere to go. If he goes back here, he gets hunted down. If he blocks with a knight, he gets checkmated. Kolbaki played the second best move, queen d3, instead of knight b to d2. And Chris didn't like moving this bishop. On d6 it blocks this bishop. On b6 it just sits there hitting d4. What's the point of having a piece doing nothing? And beginners play what I call billiards chess. They threaten a piece, they move a piece. They threaten a piece, they move a piece. Chris is on a higher level. He thought for 15 minutes and kept developing. Jim freaked out for half an hour and finally reluctantly took the bishop. Chris kept developing. And now Kolbaki played the best move, knight b to d2. Let's go back one move. Remember, Chris is down a piece, but if you look at all of White's pieces, Jim has no development, whereas Chris has moved almost every piece. He's going to get pressure down the d file if he plays rook a to d8. He's going to get pressure on f3 if he plays bishop e4. He's going to fork the king and the rook if he plays knight e3 and c2. He's going to have pressure on f2 if he comes in here with his queen. So Chris is down a piece, but he has a multitude of threats. Jim did make the best move. What would you do if you have an oven mitt on fire in your kitchen? Would you call the fire department and beg for help? Would you run over to the neighbors? No. You would take a glass of water from the kitchen sink, pour it on the oven mitt, and handle the problem. That is what I call the fire principle. In an emergency, you use the tools available in the nearby vicinity. So instead of worrying about development, in this position, the white king is the emergency. It hasn't castled yet. We want to attack. The emergency fire principle move would be queen e3. Let's look at some lines after 13 queen e3, which Chris did not play. If white castles and Chris forks the two rooks, the problem for Kolbaki is he cannot get any compensation for this rook. If he tries to cover the rook with bishop g2, you play queen e2 and then knight d3 is deadly. And if we try to move the rook to g1, we have a problem this way. And now the g1 rook will hang. One more line after 13 queen e3. Queen b3, queen f2 check, king d1. Now knight a5, driving the queen away. Rook a d8. And if white takes the knight on a5, rook d2 is very strong. If knight d2, we have a checkmate. And if king d2, we're forking the king and queen. And in fact, it's not even the strongest way to play is to take the queen. The strongest way is to play here and then come back to c4, attacking the queen also with a mating net. Instead of using the fire principle, queen e3, attacking with what you've got, Chris used the cavalry principle, which is you bring up the reserves. played rook a d8. Jim replied with the best move queen b3. And then Chris invaded with the best move queen e3. Now after c4 he had a killer, rook d3. If he tries to block the attack on his queen, we just take that off. If he plays queen c2, Chris can win the queen with the knight check. If he moves the queen, say to queen a4, or queen b5, or queen takes pawn, the answer is the same. Queen f2 check, and rook d2 will eventually mate. After 15 c4, Chris didn't play the killer rook d3. Played second best queen f2 check, king d1. Now he missed another kill with bishop e4. I'm just going to give one line. King c1, bishop takes knight, knight takes bishop, rook takes bishop, queen takes rook, queen e1 check, king c2, queen d2 check, king b1, knight e3. And in order to avoid mate, white's going to have to give up his queen. After king d1, Chris missed another killer with knight e3 check, king c1, rook d2. And now the only defense is bishop takes pawn check, king takes, queen c3 check, king g8. And whatever white captures on d2 with the knight, the queen, or the king, rook d8 is going to give him a winning attack. So after king d1, knight e3 check, king c1, rook d2 would win. And black would be a tempo up over the game, which was rook d2 immediately. After king d2, rook d8 check, king c1, knight e3. Chris is a tempo down from what he could have had. And Jim might barely squeak out with bishop g2, queen g2, queen e3, queen h1 check, queen g1, trade queens, knight a5, and then ironically the best move for Kolbaki would be bishop g2, which defaces the Chris Peterson square where his signature was inscribed. But Chris managed to keep that square unoccupied, and Kolbaki self-destructed with knight d2, queen e1 check, and he had to resign because next move would have been mate. So what do we learn from this game? First of all, Chris built up a beautiful attack by insisting on moving all his pieces out and not stopping his development for anything. Secondly, the rook d3 move on move 15 that he had, he wanted to play that move. His instincts told him to, but he couldn't see all the variations, so he didn't play it. So if you see a good move, trust your instincts. And then when he played rook d2 check, he might have intended knight e3 check first. And maybe he just transposed the move order. So be careful if you see two strong moves. Make quite sure which move should go first. The best way to encourage Chris Peterson and Brian Wall to continue playing brilliant games and posting YouTube videos about our games is to leave a comment or rate the video or subscribe to Chris's channel. Thank you.